Hey, Apple Frog here. Today footage is a friendly match with Solus and his friends. We had a few match. I mean, not few match, a lot of matches, but I don't know what determined me to save this clip or this clip. There's a bunch of clips that I had in there, and it's not. And a few matches with Callie. I hope he's okay with it for using it. And today I'll talk about some weapons are really close to being the school of tryhards, but in my opinion, it's not good enough. It's gonna be pretty debatable. Let me know if I make a huge flaws in my point. Please let me know. So for the first weapon will be the overhead attack halberds. Mainly, Black Knight Glaive, Gundir's Halberd, Wing Knight Halberd, and Lucerne. Um, Black Knight Halberd has a really good excellent combo abilities. Especially, I mean, Lucerne also has the combo ability, but especially with the R2, I think Black Knight Glaive has a little bit more, combo possibility and more various attacks than Lucerne. It's really fun to fight. Like, you can put you constantly. I think the Black Knight Glaive doesn't use that much stamina for some reason, and like I've seen somebody like continuously attack and like not just R1 R1 R1. Like he does R1 R1 weapon art R2, then to the normal R2, then starting R1 again, and then just putting like mix-ups with the weapon attacks and like non-stop attack, and you don't know when to go. And like it was pretty nice to see. Lucerne, as I said, also has a good combo ability, but the R2 is a little bit lacking. But the main thing about Lucerne is the counter damage that you can do, so you can inflict on the counter damage, and and the after recent patch, Lucerne can also attack through the shield with a weapon art attack and the R2 attacks. It did pretty much like it. So let's say somebody block your uh, full weapon art combo, like L2 R2, yeah L2 R2. Then I think it did like 300 damage with just withstanding all the hits. So that's pretty nice. And the winged halberd has the highest damage. I'm not sure if it has the longest range, but the range is pretty long. Uh, the damage is really high. Like it does like 300. It does over 300 damages compared to other overhead outlet. It does slightly below 200 damages. And but the downside is that you can only do R1 R1 combo. Other than that, it's like it doesn't combo. But in a really tense matches, I guess you can just do R1 R1 and roll out R1 R1 roll out because there's some uh risk of using weapon arts. But anyways, that's that. And the last one was Gundyr Halberd, which recently when I was fighting with the Japanese in the Korean Fight Club, it tends a lot of Japanese use that weapon. It's kind of like a main weapon in Japanese people, I guess. Uh, and one of the really good Japanese player is mainly using Gundyr's halberd. The Gundyr's halberd is like same with all the halberd, but the weapon art is it's like really, how should I say? It's kind of hard to say. It's really good, but it's also not that good, I guess. But it's really good. But they kind of abuse the weapon art a lot, and So if you don't know how to dodge the Gundir's Hobble Weapon Art, you're gonna get wrecked a lot. The damage output is huge, and um, people will think you can just parry that, but and I've seen people just easily parry it, but how Japanese were using that, they had a really good spacing. So if you space it well, it's really really hard to parry the weapon art, and they can also combo with the R1. And I mean, if you don't know how to dodge the weapon art, it's gonna be like a nightmare. Just at first when I was fighting them, one guy was just doing three weapon art 3 times in a row, and I got hit by all three and just died doing nothing. Uh, But anyways, that's that. And so the overhead attack halberds, the good thing about them is that the hyper armor damage that I guess the poise damage, it's really high. Uh, Other than ultra great weapons, it breaks all the hyper armors, and itself has a pretty decent hyper armor. It has a really long range, and the hyper armor damage hitbox is really big. So I said hyper armor damage hitbox. So like some hits that won't hit you. I mean, you won't take any damage, but you will get staggered, and it will stagger out almost everything except for the ultra great weapons. And the other, it was keep saying combo abilities. It is really fun weapon to use, like especially when you do the non-stop attack. People really don't know how to deal with it. So it mainly focuses on trading hits, and with the hyper armor, you continue into combo and inflict damage a lot. That's like how it mainly focuses on the use of the weapon. So before I go in more, I want to tie this overhead attack halberd with the great swords, the claymores and the hollow slayer great sword. They're, because these two weapons, they're very different weapon, but at the same time, like the greats, they share the same principle of the attacks and everything, I guess. So obviously the great sword has the poke R2s, and it's a little bit different on that. The weapon art is also a different, so they don't have the combo ability. In that sense, it's a little bit different, but the mainly how they use it is same, as they're both trading hits then into a combo, so and inflict more damage to the opponent. Yeah, I mean, trading hits to shut off their attacks, and using your hyper armor to follow up the combos, and anyways, that's how the main two weapons are used. But I think great swords are a little bit inferior to the overhead attack halberds, so that's why I'm just including the great swords into it. Great swords into the overhead attack halberds. Uh, so back to uh, oh, one more pros about the halberd overhead attack halberd is that for a while people's idea of countering the overhead attack halberd was the roll BS, but since actually I first saw it was pretty early in the game, when the game came out first. Uh, I think it was like April or something at the time. It was still really early. Uh, Solus the Third, not the Solus Tryhard Solus, the Solus the Third. Uh, whenever I try to roll into him to get a roll BS, he just kind of walked to the side and just backstabbed me. So that was first, like first I seen somebody do it, but and eventually later Bow Wow kind of, I don't know, I think he does it a little bit different than Solus the Third, but so he kind of figured out like a safe proof backstab. So whoever tries to roll into his attack to get a backstab, it is inevitable that person is gonna get backstabbed. And there's this technique. I don't know what it's called. Anyways, he does it, and so it's like the overhead attack halberd is like roll BS safe or like proof. So overall, it's a pretty tight weapon. It's a really good weapon. Uh, so in the early days, with people starting to use washing pole, my way to counter the washing pole was the lucerne, and uh, so when they do, I just throw one R1, and they'll come in with a running R1, and I'll just continue with another R1. Then my hyper armor could withstand the washing pole running R1, and I'll do a counter damage to the washing pole, and I'll do like I think I did like up to 500 damage to the washing pole, and he will do like 200 or 300 damage to me. So if that happens like 3 times, I take only 900 damage, and he took like 1500 damage. So like, and from that point, the game pace has changed, and they got they get frustrated. Anyways, that's how I counter the washing pole and win few fights with the washing pole. But so this, but people figure out how to deal with that eventually, and that's the big one flaw of the overhead attacks halberd. That how they people figure out how to deal with it, and that because of that just one flaw, whoever uses that tactic, it's impossible for overhead attack halberds to win. And so that what is that is this? When the overhead attack halberd does the attack R1 in between those two attack, it's fairly slow that you can put an attack in between it. So for let's say for Karthus, I think Karthus has the fastest running R1 after running R1 recovery. So what it does is like after the first hit comes in, Karthus does a running R1 and hit the opponent. Even he will hyper through and try to do another attack. Karthus can roll out because of the fast recovery. Or with a katana, you do a perfect timing and do a running R1, so it's long range. It's more easier to do the perfect timing running R1 and the stop the second attack before the hyper armor kicks in, or more safely, you can roll the first attack, and from the side you can do a R1, rolling R1, and roll away. And with that, even though it's like the hyper armor still kicks in, you can roll out without taking any damage. In the Gothard, I am not sure. I realize I haven't really tried to deal with the Gothard before, the overhead attack halberds. So I am not sure, but I'm pretty sure kind of same principle with the katana. I think the running L1 or R1 is too slow to, maybe the range can compensate it, but I think it's too slow to do the second R1 to avoid the second R1 with the running R1. And but I'm pretty sure with the rolling L1 or rolling R1, they can hit in and get out. So just if they do that, Halberd can do nothing and can't do anything. So the thing about Halberd or the great swords is this one big the thing when you fight you will realize this: they cannot initiate the first attack ever. Any bigger weapon than the spear, except for the curved greatsword, it's almost impossible to attack first successfully. It's most of the attacks are like the trading or countering and using the hyper armor to withstand the other opponent's attack, and do the following up combos attacks, and that's how it works. Uh, so only the fast weapon, the light weapons can attack first and inflict damage. So that becomes the, I think it's like the FromSoft design flaw of the weapon. So before a little bit more talk, the FromSoft flaw in weapon designs is that at first I thought this was a good idea, but what they did with the Dark Souls 3 is they made the counter pick weapon style. So each weapon has its like each counter weapon. So but that at first I thought it was a good idea, but what I realized is that that forces people to use builds that can use all weapon. It forces people to use 40-40 quality build. And just because of that, everybody's using, well, people say 40-40 quality build is good, but I think it's more about you can use all the weapons. And so let's say, and here's another flaw that I realized is that uh, one big counter pick is like straight swords is really weak to great swords or overhead attack halberds. So somebody pulls out a straight sword, you pull out a great sword. Then this person will realize they pull out a great sword, then they can just pull out a halberd to counter it. And like it will repeat the cycle. Like if somebody try to really win, they're gonna keep switching the weapon, and it's gonna be stupid. And so, like that's kind of stupid. They should have went to like the all weapons are one trick pony, so they can use all weapons in all situations. So then all the weapons are viable, so they can do, like all weapon will be viable at that point. So, and people will choose their styles and to try to overcome other weapons with skill rather than counterpicking. Anyways, that's what I think. And so the three weapon, keep talking about Karthus, Katana, Gothard. They're like one trick pony weapons. They can be good in all those any situations. So back to the overhead halberds. Uh, since so they can't initiate the first attack, they can only rely on some the opponent attacking you first. So one usually does the bait R1 and follow up the follow up the counter the trade the follow up attacks. But since those three weapons can do that, get hits in and out, the halberd can do nothing else. That's all they can do. They cannot initiate the first attack in. So then the whole game pace is just the whole fight is gonna be managed by the whole pace is gonna managed by the faster weapon. And there's nothing Halberd can do because of just that one big flaw. It cannot be the school of Tryhards. The next weapon is very personal to me. The straight sword with the weapon art shield combo. So I personally tried this really hard to make it something worth it. I think I gave up. Tried really hard till last month. I think a month ago. Uh, but eventually, I mean, a lot of people told me it's not gonna work. Probably most people think it's still. I mean, they don't think it's gonna work, but I put my time in. I just want to kind of talk about it so it's you guys can understand more why some things can't be the school of tryhards and those things. And but before that, one funny thing is that in the Korean Fight Club community, one of the best player, and he's really good that he's also known among the Japanese player. Uh, he uses Lothric Straight Sword with the Black Knight Shield, which is the Weapon Art Shield. He plays like me what I did, what I was trying to do, and he's really good with it. So maybe it's just me. I'm not good, but still, when even I fight him with Karthus, I usually win him. So it kind of still shows, the flaw into it. Uh, so uh, so first of all, let me talk about the pros of this weapon. So, and it has all the straight sword, one hand form pros, and a lot of people already knows how good that is. Uh, Two-handed R1 does more damage, but it's slow. So if you keep trying to trade with a straight sword one hand mode, two-hand mode will lose because of the attack speed. And the two-hand R1 is really good, but it lacks a bit of tracking. And here's the main thing about this combo. Uh, the normal weapon art, so L2R1. Since I'm just gonna call it normal weapon art because I realize not everybody's gonna use PS4 controller. Anyways, so the normal weapon art, it does guard break, and before recent patch, uh, so you needed to use the Horsehoof Ring, which boosts 30% of the stamina damage. It says only on the kick, but in actuality, it adds to all the attacks. And except for, except for Black Knight Shield, it could guard break any weapon. Any shield. Also, except for the Great Shields, it could guard break all the shields with one weapon art. The normal weapon art, though, yeah, L2R1 attack, and it will guard break instantly, and you could do a riposte in, and it was really good. So, before about the shield nerf, at first I thought they made the weapon art stronger, but apparently Bao was doing some test. I guess he says that I think they just overall nerfed the shield to 30% effective. So before the patch with the Horsehoof Ring, if you two-hand the weapon, you can pretty much guard break any shield with 5 hits. And with the Lucerne, I think you could like do in 4 hits or something like that. And now, without the Horsehoof Ring, with two-handing, I think you can still do like 5 hits in and guard break with any weapon, I think. So like they basically kind of nerfed the whole shield to 30% less effective, I guess, something like that. But to think about that, I just realized that, so if you put a Horsehoof Ring, which, oh, and before that, like, I was recently using the shield and saw like somebody was kicking me, and he was doing like 70% of my stamina. And right now I'm just thinking, if I put a Horsehoof Ring, maybe one kick will just knock off the shield. I don't know. I have to test that. I'm probably gonna test it soon. Anyways, so the normal weapon art looks like it has a attack speed of a normal R1, and I tested the range. It has the same range with the normal R1, but it does like 1.5 to 6 times more damage. So if you like somebody tries to running R1 into you, and if you do the weapon R onto them, you do 1.5 times more damage, and like it's really strong. I think it's really good for like trading attacks because it's kind of fast, so people are a little bit harder to read the attack, I guess. And the next one, the strong weapon art, which is the L2R2, it has hyper armor and the counter damage, and the range is really long. So, and with these theoretical stuff, straight through weapon art with the shield combo is real. Like it should be the strongest among the light weapons, like including the spears, because the hyper armor on the strong weapon art can withstand shield pokes, and I think it can't withstand great swords. So anything that bigger than the great swords, it can't withstand it. But like for some reason, if I remember, what I remember was that the really early in the game, it felt like it can withstand the ultra great weapons. But maybe I was wrong. But anyways, right now, the current patch, right after like first or second patch, it couldn't withstand the big weapons. Maybe I could be wrong, but right now, anyways, currently it is impossible to withstand it. So it can break with the bigger weapons, the hype armor. You can break them, and but like this theoretically, so it should be the strongest weapon among the light weapons. So I thought, well, I wasn't just good at spacing and stuff and like blah blah blah, but just simply the straight sword with the weapon art cannot work. It's just simply because weapon arts are too slow and it's too visible. So what people do is they outtrade it. I mean, not outspace it. Like when they see it, I mean, the weapon art is so slow that when you just see the initiation, you have plenty of time to just roll out. And the hyper armor initiating is too late. So what I used to do was like I roll in through the weapon art, but when I roll in, they just R1 R1 or try to if I try to do the weapon art, they just R1 it and right away. Then it breaks the hyper armor because the hyper armor didn't kick in yet, and it's parryable. And so there's one good way to do is like beta attack. I mean, do a beta attack and put the use the weapon art. In theory, it's really good, but here's one big thing about it. So if you do R1 and press L2 R1 or R2 really fast, it won't do the weapon art. It will do another R1 or R2. You have to put a little bit delay into it. So that little bit delay will make a really bad, timing. It becomes really slow. So, and once you practice it and get the perfect timing out, even though that I practiced a lot, so I made the perfect timing for that. Even though it worked for a while for the new peoples that didn't know my beta attacks, but after they realized my beta attack, it never works again. It's just too slow to hit someone. So if I do a weapon art with the strong weapon art while I'm in the animation, with a Karthus, what you can do is you can hit once and roll out. Oh, and while the strong weapon art is on, you have a 50% defense bonus. So when you trade with somebody, you'll take only half of damage and you will inflict the counter damage. It's like really, ideally, really, really good. But as I said, when you see the weapon art animation, you can just hit once. If you hit early enough, it will break the hyper armor. If you hit late, you can still roll out just with one hit and roll out. And well, you'll do only like 150 damage, but he can't hit you. And if you could repeat that, eventually you're gonna win. And the other thing is like somebody's good at parry. I've seen this a lot. They just stand there and just parry it because it's so slow. They can just see it and parry it. And also I've seen a lot of people just run away. It doesn't. You can't. It's slow. You can't follow it. It's kind of sad in that ways. So like a little bit more history of how I used it was first I just did the weapon art R2, strong weapon art, and countered people, and people got shredded by that attack. they didn't know how to deal with it. So but people realized how to deal with it. Just did they just run away or roll away, or just didn't bother with it and roll away. And the second and always spacing game, weapon art is kind of inferior to the spacing game. And so I was, you know, they wait till my animation attack is finished and they just stand at the end. After my animation is finished, they just R1 R1 and just punish me a lot. So I started to figure out do another thing, and it was at the time the shield was a big thing. Everybody was using a shield, so I just guard break them with the weapon art and do a riposte. Like even sometimes I even did this. I do a guard break and riposte, and they will knock off on the ground. And when they wake up, at the time shield was a big thing, so people will just stand up and try to block. And I knew that, so I do another weapon art and the guard break twice in a row, and then riposte them twice, and like that was a thing. But eventually people realized that, and they just roll away. I thought the R1 normal weapon art was fast enough, but the reality was it wasn't fast enough. They could see it and roll away. They had plenty of time. So the other thing I did was R1 bait to a weapon art. I had to practice a lot, R1, and practice the delay timing and do the weapon art. And at first it worked. I did a lot of counter damage and blah blah blah. Because every time I do a random R1, then they'll always come in for a counter attack. But with the weapon art, if you do the weapon art, you'll do the counter. Anyways, it was a really good strategy for a while, but people really can caught up really easily that it's a bait, and they no matter how you mix it up. Oh, and I think eventually what people realized that weapon art hyper armor came out really late, and I think at the time the Karthus was getting strong. When I say getting strong, like a lot of people realized how good it was, and everybody was using it. So they just come up and just R1 on me, and I can't even initiate the weapon art. And it's like, eventually, there was a lot of problems. But as again I said before, the Korean best player is like using the straight sword with the weapon art shield. He uses the Black Knight shield, and I was using the Knight Kite. I was using Kite shield, and I put the simple infusion for the constant weapon art things, and I never used it for a block. So, but this guy, he used the Black Knight shield for block also. So I guess that makes it a little bit more difference. Maybe I'm just bad. He's really good, and maybe it is good enough, but I don't know. But the thing about another thing is like the weapon art with the straight sword with the weapon art is that it can't win the counter pick weapons. It's really hard to win the great swords or the overhead attack with the straight swords. There's a limitation to it, and the straight sword is not fast enough or has the range to you know attack safely in between the great swords or overhead attack weapons. And but recently, I did it with the weapon art, strong weapon art. Like I saw weapon first attack come in, and I did the whip strong whip. I mean, okay. So I saw a overhead attack with the halberd, one attack, and I did the weapon art in between it, and I got hit by the second R1, but because of the defense bonus, I took only half of damage, and he took a counter damage, and I was able to roll out. So maybe I don't know, but recently they also nerfed the Onry sword, so it kind of made me lose more hope about it. Um, and I mean, I kind of understand they nerfed the Onry sword. It was really really good, but I mean nobody was complaining about it. But in theory, it was too good to be true. and I was thinking, they're not gonna nerf this. And at the few days later, they nerfed this anyways. And they buffed the Holy Sword. If Holy Sword has a kind of same principle, a little bit different style. I mean, the Lothric Holy Sword. They buffed it, but I think because of the faith requirement, it became a nerf. And even with the faith requirement, like I tested out, like 60 dex, no, 40 strength, 60 dex, 40 uh faith. It only do 395 AR, which is really weak. And I don't know. Recently made a new Henri build. It does pretty decent damage, but the one problem is you can use only only Henri sword. Other weapons are like you can't use it. So, anyways, that's why straight sword with a weapon art can't be in the School of Tryhards. Actually, there's like 3 more things I want to talk about, but I just realized it's already almost 30 minutes. I think it's almost 30 minutes. It didn't pass 30 minutes yet. Anyways, and I don't want to do a video over 30 minutes. I guess I'll have to continue in the next video. Uh, I didn't thought it was gonna take this long to talk about two of these things. Anyways, thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. I guess I'll see you guys later. Bye.